Hey guys, I'm here to get into Rosemary's Baby, which was directed by Roman Polanski in the year released in 1968, and this just really holds up. It's just one of the most disturbingly just fucked up horror films ever made. Like, I mean, this is really disturbing, and it feels like it honestly holds up on every rewatch. It's like as messed up as a lot of it is. I mean, it's like Polanski might be one of those challenging, like he completely resonates as an artist kind of guy because like in this depiction, you're just kind of witnessing something of a burning candle and a real feeling that fear is lurking around everywhere. It's a very disturbing atmosphere, one of the most subtle atmospheres of all time, too, because it really lures you in with this sort of just like lush and beautiful kind of world building, but then it ultimately turns out to just stab you with a knife, like basically. And it kind of does it with a subtle sense of humor, even along the way, but very horrifying ultimately. I remember I first saw this when I was like 18, and I remember just being up for days over like this. This is spooky. I mean, this is like really felt like the purest sense seeing a ghost story that actually stabs. Like this is an absolute masterpiece of just a very melancholic depiction on horror, you could say, like the demon sort of perspective. It's like I love films like this, and like the characterization is just really, really detail oriented, and especially like John Cassavetes and Mia Farrow. Man, it's just crooked where all this goes, downright crooked, and it's easy to feel skeptical about all this, but all the same, it just kind of observes a lot of confusion in the air and kind of how characters just need to seek something to feel less disturbed about it. And then just Polanski's detail-oriented directing is just extremely strong throughout all of this. And Christoph's Commedia soundtrack is again just completely perfect. I mean, everything about this film really is kind of like a uniquely perfect sort of foundation to the horror genre. It feels way ahead of its time from the '60s, honestly. Like, a lot of projects did, like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Once Upon a Time in the West, amongst others. And this is just sort of like following a troubled protagonist as all of this escalates more and more into like madness, and like kind of like looking at a lot of delusional qualities also, where characters kind of feel like everything's going to be okay, but then there's just this strong stab in the knife with a knife that kind of happens with all of this. This film just really feels like something evil is living inside of it in a very unique sense. It's very a completely fascinating like project that's very difficult to just turn away from. You can say. I mean, all of this really scars. It's really disturbing. Every time I rewatch it, it always kind of lands as just something that's very haunting in every sense of the word. You can honestly just see the roots of like directors like Ari Aster living right here. Yeah, this is completely ahead of its time. This is very original, and I really love how ambiguous all of this is. Like again, every time you watch it, it kind of does like leave a lot of mystery on it. It kind of continues a lot of foundation of Alfred Hitchcock, maybe to even more like disturbing territory, because it's kind of like to say that no one will stab you quite like a Polanski film, and it's true. It just actually is. He's a very unique like artist in that sense. I feel like he is about as talented as a Stanley Kubrick type, but he like kind of is a lot more of a depressive downbeat kind of personality, like all this stuff. But he's always kind of has this like subtle sense of humor lurking about it all too. But I mean, very evil ultimately. This is just a really paranoid kind of atmosphere. I mean, the atmosphere and the color, again, it's like you can just live in this atmosphere for days. I mean, this is like literally it's some of the greatest apartment atmosphere I've ever seen, which is what Clancy's kind of a master of conveying plans, paranoia and anxiety in apartment atmosphere. This film just really leaves a timeless legacy. It feels like it just influences about every decade moving forward in the horror genre, particularly. And it just kind of looks at like the dark side of getting into the supernatural as you just kind of ultimately, she ends up kind of just going to the satanic force ultimately. And yeah, it really holds up. And it's a good, like, organic, like, New York, kind of loose sort of New York City perspective, which feels like a complete foreshadow to a lot of, like, just 70s filmmaking, especially. I really see the 70s kind of rooted right here. Just amazing cinematography. Everything about this feels very eerie, very off, in a perfectly intriguing sort of way. Like, it's very much just a timeless classic. Like, I mean, this kind of is one of the most subtle depictions of how evil can just sort of strike a person in the most unassuming sort of way. It's a very silly sort of depiction, but it's also just extremely impactful. I mean, this is really suspenseful all throughout. And yeah, like, it just leaves a strong aftermath. Like, that's the way every time I rewatch it, it's like, wow, that feels heavy, particularly heavy. And yeah, this is just really a masterpiece of the horror genre. It really always kind of just feels like something's wrong, but it's like, I don't know, it's just the world building is perfectly inviting and conveying this place that just really strikes without conveying like it's not like a really like a violent sort of film at all. It's just kind of all about it's moody. It's just feeling very gloomy. I guess the epitome of a gloomy sort of depiction. And just this is perfect from start to finish. And honestly, it just goes strong with it as a timeless foundation to the horror genre.